On July 16th, John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. tragically died in a plane crash. And 36 years ago, his father, U.S. President John F. Kennedy, was shot dead in Dallas. But the evil fate began to pursue the Kennedy family much earlier. Members of the most influential political clan in America rarely died of their own accord. Patricks from the Big Road biographers do not like to remember the first Kennedy who set foot on American soil. They say he was not the best man. About Patrick Kennedy is known little. He was born in Ireland in County Wexford in 1823 and was a peasant. Like many of his countrymen, Patrick fled the terrible famine that struck Ireland in 1840 to America. On the ship, he met a girl named Mary Joanna and fell in love with her at first sight. On American soil, 5 children were born to them. The heir of the family was Patrick Joseph, who died 35 years of age, leaving his wife a good inheritance. True, it is generally believed that after his death, his wife was left with 4 children in her arms and without a single cent in her pocket. But this is the official version. Unofficially, the money in the family was, and they earned them, were family business, robbery on the Big Road. It's been going on ever since. The next Kennedy died quite wealthy, a man and the owner of his own bank. Thus, his son, Joseph Patrick Kennedy, had money from birth. But he needed not just money, but very big money. After graduating from Harvard University, he became president of the bank at the age of 25. His father-in-law, the mayor of Boston, helped his son-in-law avoid the draft in 1917 by giving him a position in a warship building company. When World War I ended, the wartime plant manager retrained as a broker. Colleagues spoke about him exceptionally badly, but recognized that Joseph Patrick knows how to make money. Increase the capital helped 2 circumstances. In the mid-20s, Kennedy bored with the stock exchange, and he took away from there all his money, investing it in Hollywood. And from 1920 to 1933, the main profits Joseph Patrick gave illegal trade in alcohol. On the eve of World War II, the Kennedy clan was considered the second richest family in the world after the Rockefellers. The Puritan wife believed that sex was only necessary to have children. 9 times in a lifetime? It was too little too late for Joseph Patrick, and he began to seek solace on the side. He had many actress mistresses, including Gloria Swanson, who became a movie star at his own studio. He slept with his secretary, Janet DeRosier, and used prostitutes constantly. Such was Joseph Patrick Kennedy, the father of the future president of the United States. It was he and his wife, Rose Elizabeth Fitzgerald, are considered the founders of the Kennedy clan. And it was Joseph Patrick, as the Kennedys themselves believe, brought a curse on their children. Dead siblings Joseph Patrick and Rose had 9 children. 5 met a terrible fate. Daughter Rosemary was the first to end up in an insane asylum. She suffered from childhood mental retardation, and she had uncontrollable outbursts of anger. In 1941, at her father's insistence, doctors gave Rosemary a lobotomy. The operation was unsuccessful. The girl turned into what psychiatrists among themselves called vegetable, a creature incapable of the simplest meaningful actions. She died in a mental hospital. Another daughter, Kathleen, was widowed in World War II, and a few years later, in 1948, died in a plane crash. She was 28 years old. That's when her father first said, "There is a curse on the Kennedy family." Son Joseph was brought up as the heir to the richest family. London School of Economics, Harvard. Before the title of Master of Laws was 1 year away, when Joseph Patrick enlisted as a volunteer in the military aviation. After a year of patrol flights in the Caribbean, he was transferred to England in September 1943. He was a heavy bomber pilot, the best in his squadron. On August 12, 1944, Joseph Patrick flew on another mission, to the area from where the Germans were launching rockets V-2. For unknown reasons, loaded with 8 tons of explosives, the plane exploded in midair. John's biography began similarly. Economics, in London, law, At Harvard, volunteered for the Navy. In the night from 1 to the 2nd of August 1943, torpedo boat under the command of Lieutenant Kennedy was hit by a torpedo launched from a Japanese cruiser. Kennedy swam 5 kilometers to the shore of New Georgia Island, towing a wounded sailor. He escaped to live another 20 years, become President of the United States, and die from an assassin's bullet. Robert outlived him by only 5 years. He was his father's favorite. It is said that it was his father who insisted that Robert become Secretary of Justice in the Kennedy government. Then, President Kennedy was assassinated. In 1968, Robert, continuing the family business, became one of the most likely candidates for the Democratic presidential nomination and was shot and killed by an Arab fanatic who sentenced him to death for American Democrats' sympathy for Israel. The only son who survived to this day is Senator Edward. His life was shattered in a single moment on July 18, 1969. Until that day, he was considered a potential presidential candidate. After that day, a scoundrel. That day, he was driving a car across a bridge leading to an island with the tricky name of Chappaquiddick. There was one passenger in the car, his assistant and mistress Mary Jo Kopechna. For unknown reasons, the car lost control and fell off the bridge. The senator swam out, leaving the 31-year-old woman for dead. A terrible scandal ensued, after which the presidency had to be forgotten. However, neither the shame of Edward nor the murders of John and Robert, the father of the family Joseph Patrick has not seen. In December 1961, he suffered a severe stroke, and 8 years, until his death, remained paralyzed and almost mute. He had no reaction to the murders of his children, and 15 years did not live to see the tragic death of the first of his grandchildren. The last generation, the next victim, was the son of the shot Robert Kennedy, David. He grew up a happy, spoiled boy. One day, when he was almost 13 years old, Dave did not want to go to bed on time. He was watching TV. His father was being shown live. How his father was killed was also shown live. Dave could never forget it. A few days later, David wrote his mother a note. "I'd rather have a father like that for 10 years than any other for 1,000,000 years." The boy began battling depression with cocaine and heroin. He was treated several times for drug addiction, but to no avail. On the evening of April 24, 1984, David had dinner at the Rain Dancer restaurant in Palm Beach, California, with a German woman named Marion Niemann. As she later recalled, he drank at least 7 shots of vodka without an appetizer. When they returned to the hotel, David began to tell her about his father's death. The next morning, he drove to the family estate in Palm Beach. The gatekeeper wouldn't let the dirty junkie in, mistaking Dave for a beggar. And he was in such a state that he couldn't even explain who he was. He had to go back to the hotel. He put a "Do Not Disturb" sign on his room door, snorted some cocaine, took some pills the doctor had prescribed, then remembered he had some other pills he'd borrowed from his grandmother. Dave hoped they would work like a drug. It was the cardiac drug Demoral. The mixture of cocaine and Demerol proved deadly. One of Dave's brothers, Joseph, is alive and well. In 1973, he managed to survive a terrible car accident. Paralyzed, left his companion. Another brother, Michael, less fortunate. In 1997, he decided to go skiing and crashed to death. After all this, the recent death of President Kennedy's son, John Fitzgerald Jr., may seem accidental to some. Who could have foreseen that the plane carrying his wife Caroline and sister-in-law Lauren would fall into the ocean? Unless their grandfather, Joseph Patrick, had said that the Kennedy family was under a curse.